really excited for this morning. We've been in a series called Find Your People. We talked a lot about finding community in a lonely world. We spent a week talking about what does it look like to find a spiritual family, to find your place, and what happens if we, just engage with the church very sporadically versus engage with it as if it's a family. We talked about that, and I'm excited for this week as we talk about finding your person. So we talked about finding your people, your community. Today we're going to narrow it down a little bit and talk about finding your person. And so we're going to talk about singleness. We're going to talk about dating and kind of that season of maybe engagement. And we're going to talk about marriage. So we also recognize there's some married people in the room, and so we are going to not neglect you today and talk a little bit about once you found your person, what is God calling you to in that? And so I'm really excited because I'm not up here alone to talk about this. My wife, Haley, is actually joining, and so I'm really excited for you to hear.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
That's very clap-worthy. Anything good that I've said or done is probably from her. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from Haley today.
Yeah, like Alex said, I'm Haley. I'm super excited to get to, talk with Alex. This is one of our favorite things to do together, and so it's always a joy to get to plan these things together and doing them together. So Alex asked me to share a little bit about our story to start off today.
Thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, thought it'd be fun. Now,
we'll see.
I'm interested to see, our stories may be a little different, and so we'll see if he agrees with everything.
So if you want the truth to come find me at the Connect Center afterwards, we'll talk about what happened.
Sure, whatever. Okay, so I would love to say that the moment that Alex and I met, it was like fireworks, and we both, locked eyes, and we're like, you're it, you're my person, I love you, But little context, the first time that Alex and I met was on a mission trip, and I was 13, and Alex was almost 18. So
I promise we did not lock eyes. Okay, that's not what happened.
Would have been maybe weird, so that didn't happen. He was actually on this mission trip with his girlfriend at the time, so very much, focused on another girl. I was very much focused on just any other guy, really, that was, focused on me. That would have been great.
Okay.
And also,
you didn't share that when we were going through this.
And also the Lord, because we were on a mission trip, so we weren't really thinking about each other. But anyway, so I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we didn't think about each other a single time from that point until we reconnected my senior year. So anyway, so we reconnected kind of my senior year, really not even us reconnecting. Alex became best friends with my older brother. And so he started.
It's the long play. There's a strategy move there.
Yeah. Don't believe him. That was not his intention going into this friendship. He was still dating said girl from mission trip. So he was still in a relationship, best friends with my brother, just really started coming around a lot, hanging out with our family, went on vacations with us, with Heath, and just kind of got to know all of us. And so this is where our story differs, okay? This was a moment that I promise you guys can call my mom. I came home and I told Mom pretty early on into Alex kind of entering back into my life, Mom, I think I'm going to marry this guy. Remember, he's dating someone, okay? So I'm the crazy creep who's like, I'm going to marry the guy that's almost engaged to that girl. And I wasn't super shy about it either. I kind of told everybody. Not cool, looking back. But I was just really certain. Alex at this time was not interested in me, right? And so we kind of just became friends. He was hanging out a lot. We kind of started talking as friends on his side. And so then, long story short, broke up with girl. And then that summer, right before we went to college, we started dating. And so we were going to the same college anyways. He finally came around and realized what God was asking him to do. I knew this whole time. And so he asked me out on a date. And for Alex and I, really, we dated for about a year, got engaged, was engaged for about a year, and then we got married when I was 20 and he was 24. And so we've been doing life together ever since. So anyways, telling that story, I would say that you might hear in the way that I'm talking that I'm a little bit of a hopeless romantic, right? Truthfully, it wasn't that out of character for me to say, I'm going to marry this guy. I would love to say that it was, but it really wasn't.
There were others. There were others that she said that about. Yeah.
There were others, yes. And that's, honestly, I think that's because, I think especially for girls, and maybe this is stereotypical, but we kind of grow up dreaming about love, dreaming about marriage. You know, we see all the movies and see all the things. But really, I don't think it's just a girl desire. I think it's a person desire. And whether you have the desire to be married or not, we all have a desire to belong, right? We all have a desire to be chosen. Really, I think when it comes down to it, we kind of want to be first pick, right? Speaking from experience, nobody likes being picked last in gym class, okay? That was me for a long time. Nobody likes it, right? We want to be somebody's first choice. And we want to have somebody that's our first choice. And so I think that what that causes, though, is a lot of times when we think about romantic relationships, we kind of think about it like this in a spectrum. I think it's going to be up here, maybe. Well, I'll just start talking about it.
There we go. There it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So we kind of think about it of like, I am only single until I'm not single. My goal of being single is to not be single, right? And so I'm going to be single for as short amount of time as I possibly can, and then I'm going to start dating. And then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel chosen, right? And all the things, and it's going to be wonderful. And then, of course, I'm going to get married to this person that I'm dating because we love each other, right? And so now we're going to get married. And when I'm married, well, then that's it. That's the end goal, right? It's happened. I'm here. My life is wonderful. I don't struggle anymore. And obviously, all the married people in the room could probably be like, that's not true, right? It's not true.
Not me.
Except for Alex, of course. But that's because of me, so anyways. But I think that oftentimes we kind of think about it in this light. And I think also sometimes the church even kind of feeds this idea that you are single for the purpose of eventually being married. I think unintentionally there's this idea in the church, especially in the South, because, you know, people get married, I think, a little younger here, that marriage is the end goal, that you are holier if you're married, that it is the best picture of the gospel out there, and if you're not a part of that, you're missing out, right? And so I think we've kind of talked about this a lot, but I don't think that's what the Bible says. And so we're going to look at what Paul talks about when talking about this idea.
Yeah, and so as we kind of dive into our text today, it's really interesting when we look at it and when you read the Bible. So some of the most robust teachings that we have on marriage and relationships and finding your person actually come from two single men, Jesus and Paul. And so when you look at the life of Jesus, we know that Jesus was single until the day he died. And I think it's easy sometimes to look at his life and be like, well, yeah, but he was God, right? It was easy for him because he was God. He knew the whole plan. He knew all the things. And I would say, yes, that is true. He was God, but he was also fully man. And so for us, when we think about that, I think we actually are a little bit off on our theology if we start thinking about Jesus' life as a human was easier than our life as a human because he was also fully God. There's actually a heresy that the church has rejected and condemned called docetism, and this is where you don't fully embrace the idea of Jesus' dual nature as fully God and fully human. And so, man, I think it would be us missing something if we were looking at the life of Jesus and didn't look at him and say, Jesus, fully man as well as fully God, suffered like we do, had to rely on the Spirit's power just like we do. And so I would just say this, don't ignore Jesus Christ and his singleness and him leveraging his life as a single man to honor and serve God. Don't miss that, because that is part of his story. And then we see Paul, right? This guy that teaches so much about marriage and what that relationship looks like is actually a single man. He lived his life as a single man and saw singleness not only as an opportunity, but even beyond that, here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, which is where we're going to be today, he actually says that it would be better to remain as he is, to remain single. So let's read that text, and then we're going to go back and kind of dissect our teaching text a little bit. So we're going to start in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 7 and 8. This is what Paul says, single Paul. I wish that all were as I myself am, but each has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single as I am. And so Paul right here is saying that singleness is in fact a gift. He's also saying that marriage is a gift. And he's saying that each person has their own gifting. And so he's saying whether you are married and you love it, whether you are single, right, and that's the season that you're in, it is a gift. Now, let me also pause right here and say this to all the single people in the room. You may be in your singleness right now and be thinking, it doesn't feel like a gift. I actually quite enjoy opening up gifts and receiving those things from people. This doesn't feel like a joyful thing to like open up and be like, oh yay, I'm single, I don't have a person. And so we recognize that. We recognize that that may not be how you feel in this moment, that it may not feel like a gift. And we also recognize that I am not like Paul. I am married. And so it may be very easy for you to be listening to this message and thinking, yeah, well, if it's such a gift and it's so good, why did you choose to get married? It's easy for you to say. And so we recognize all that, okay? We don't want to diminish your season or anything like that. And actually what we have found is as we have conversations with people, whether they are single or dating and hoping to be engaged or engaged and just can't wait to get married, or even if people are married and they're trying to navigate that, actually, sometimes when we think about where we are in the season that we're in, it can actually bring up a lot of anxiety. And so maybe you're in the room and you're asking questions like some of these. What does it mean to abstain from physical intimacy while maintaining physical desires? What does it mean to be content in one's singleness while longing for marriage? Is a spouse somebody that I'm allowed to keep hoping for? What does it mean to be a sexual being without certain sexual permissions? Maybe you're older and you're wondering, will I be able to have children? It's a hard question to ask. Maybe you're in here and you're asking, man, how do I deal with the fact that all my friends my age are married or on their second or third kid and I am still single? Maybe you're asking, am I desirable at all? How do I find someone to date when it seems like there are no suitable options? Should I use technology or online dating? Should I date an unbeliever as long as they're supportive of my religious affiliation? How do I know how vulnerable to be with someone who is not my spouse? How do I trust God in my singleness? I think these are really common questions. I think if you're asking these questions, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It actually means that you're human. But sometimes the more we ask these, we get caught in a spiral and we can actually become very anxious about a season that God has intentionally put us in for a reason. And so here, as we go back to our teaching text and we shift down to verses 32 to 35 in 1 Corinthians 7, this is actually what Paul says. And I love this first verse. He says, I want you, in verse 32, I want you to be free from anxieties. And so he's writing this not to create more anxiety in you, right? He's writing this and talks about marriage and talks about singleness in this chapter. And he's saying, I'm writing this so that you would be free from anxieties. He continues and says, the unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and in spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. Verse 35, I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. And so here we see at the very beginning, he's like, I'm writing this because I don't want you to be anxious. And this word, this first word for anxieties that he uses in verse 32 is actually this idea of, he's saying, I want you to be secure. I want you to be secure in yourself. I want you to be secure in your relationships. I want you to be secure in your relationship with God. And so it's not contradicting then for him to say, I want you to be free from anxieties. This is what married people are anxious with, right? Or to say that it's a bad thing to be anxious about the things of the Lord. That's actually not like a sinful worry term. It's actually just what you're setting your mind to, what you're being careful to do or not do. And so right here, he's saying, listen, I want you to be secure, because what tends to happen is the unmarried man, the unmarried woman, what they are able to do is they're able to set their minds undistracted towards God, towards seeking him. But the married man, the married woman is actually caught up in some things that they have to be responsible for and things that occupy their mind here on earth, like pleasing their spouse, taking care of their kids, right? There's just a reality to right here that what Paul's saying is that, listen, if you are single, it's not that you don't have a life. It's not that you're not busy, right? It is simply that there are things that married people and people with kids have on their minds that they have to set their minds to, that the freedom in your season is you don't have to yet. And that, he's saying, that is a gift. That is a good thing. He uses this language, and I think it's so true in verse 34. He says, listen, the married man, the married woman, their interests are just divided. It's not that they can't be devoted to the Lord, right? That's not true. Like, we know married people can be devoted to the Lord, but what he's saying is they are also devoted to their spouse that they're called to serve. They're also devoted to their kids that they're called to disciple. And so there is just a dividing of their mind, things that they have to set their minds to. So I thought this would be fun. Haley is a wife and a mom. Haley, give us some just quick examples this week of how your attention was divided as in those roles.
Yes. Well, of course, every morning when I woke up, the first thing on my mind is Alex and what he needs. And I think about what kind of coffee he might want. And I don't do that. Just so you know, I don't do that. The first thing on my mind is usually my children who are screaming at me.
Who might quite literally be like sitting on your head.
Like
right?
actually kicking me
on
in
your
the back.
mind. Yeah.
Bedfist, yes. And so, yeah, just, I mean, honestly though, wake up. I don't know if I brushed my teeth. I'm not sure when I showered last. I'm not disgusting. I did shower this morning, just so everyone knows. But I'm thinking about.
You did so good today. Yeah.
But I'm thinking about, what are my kids going to eat? Okay, I do make Alex a coffee in the morning. And so I think about that, or I think about, what does our day look like? Who's picking up the kids if I'm going to work? Who's coming here for this, right? And even when I'm at work, I'm thinking about that. So, I mean, yeah, I think that I often say you're never not a wife and you're never not a mom. No matter what you're doing, you're thinking about those things being taken care of, for sure.
Yeah, and I think an important distinction here, like, do not hear us say that single people are not busy or they don't have important things going on. What we're saying is, hey, you are busy, but you are primarily busy with things that, for the most part, you choose for your own life. As opposed to when you are married or when you have kids, there are things that you choose for your own life, and there are also responsibilities of like, hey, I don't get a choice in this. I'm still a dad. I'm still a mom all the time, right? And so there's just a present reality to, there is a divided interest. And so part of the way we receive that as a gift in singleness is, hey, your interests don't have to be divided. I love this too at the end in verse 35. He says, I say this for your own benefit. Now, we already talked about how you may not feel like your singleness is a good thing right now. You may not feel like, hey, this is just a really fun, enjoyable, joyful season that I'm in. But Paul writes right here, it's still for your benefit. Like, it is still ultimately, God's going to use it for your good and for his glory. And so here, it may be difficult, but it can still be beneficial. There's still something that God is trying to teach you in your singleness or in your season. Maybe it's dating or whatever it is. There's something for you. And he says, I'm not saying this to lay restraint on you. I'm not trying to take away freedom. I'm not trying to create more insecurities or more anxieties in you. That's not what I'm trying to do. So he's not saying like, hey, you're stuck in this. It's not to lay restraint on you. It's actually to promote good order. It's to show you what does it look like to be part of the kingdom and also be single and also not have a spouse to partner with me in that. what does that look like? And when we think about the kingdom, so much about being a part of the kingdom is God actually bringing order to chaos. When you look around the world, right, and you talk about the prince and power of the air, Satan, and his kingdom, it is pure chaos. And what God does is he actually brings order to chaos. So when you're part of his kingdom, even as a single person, he's saying, listen, this is ordered. Like your steps are planned. I need you to trust me even in this season. And he says this is to secure, I love this language, to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. That's the point. The goal of your life is not to get married. That's not the end goal. That's not the solutions to all of your single problems. It's really not, okay? Your goal in this season and every season is that you would have undivided devotion to the Lord.
Yeah, and if you look back in verse 17 of this same chapter, Paul talks about living the life that you are assigned and the thing that God has called you to. And so we want to recognize in the room, we've got people who are assigned to marriage. You're in it. You chose to get married. This is now your assignment. Whether you like it or not, this is it, right? This is what God has called you to. And for the single person, right now, this is your assignment. Maybe forever, this is your assignment, and this is what God has called you to. And so we're going to talk about how do we live that undivided devotion in each of our assignments, however they might be different.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting too and worth noting that Paul really just references two groups of people here, right? The married person and the unmarried person. And so we see here, he kind of references two groups of people. What we're going to do kind of for the rest of our time is we're going to include a third group that's kind of that dating and engaged. And the reason we're throwing that in is because in our culture today, it is such a prevalent part of how we eventually find our person, how we find our spouse. But it's also important to know that historically, like during the Bible times, right, during that context, that's not how things worked. You will not find verses in the Bible about dating because dating didn't exist, all right? It was arranged marriages. It was a family ordeal. It was not two people somehow found each other, fell in love, and ran off together. That's not how it worked. That's not what it looked like. And so it didn't exist then, but it very much does exist now. And so we're going to spend the rest of our time kind of talking about and highlighting the gifts and offering guidance, so gifts and guidance for whatever season you're in, whether you're single, whether you're dating, or whether you are married. And so we're going to jump in and look at some of the gifts and guidance that we may have about being single.
Yes, and so full, just kind of a confession here. You guys just heard our story. We are not speaking about singleness necessarily from experience, right? I quite literally have never been a single adult, right? I met Alex when I was 18. We started dating, and we got married when I was 20. Alex, he didn't tell his whole story, but he's been single, I think, like a total of 2 months since, like, 2011.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
So this is not coming from a place of like,
we're not like singleness
this.
experts here.
No,
okay?
We're not. But we are really passionate about it because we have close friends who are single that we've gotten the privilege of walking alongside and hearing about what life is like for them, what following Jesus is like for them. And we're just really passionate because I think that single people can sometimes be or felt forgotten in the church and in teaching. And so we just don't want that here. So
yeah, and let me set up really quickly just like why we're talking about this and really why we're spending the majority of the rest of our time talking about singleness versus kind of the other two seasons. If you've been around local any time at all, you know that we're a very young church. We have a lot of college students, we have a lot of young adults, and so we have a lot of single people in our church. But even as you look around culture, like outside of these walls, you'll also notice that singleness, just as a part of our culture, is increasing in rate and duration of singleness. And so here are a few stats to kind of illustrate what I mean by that. For the first time in American history, there are more single people in this generation than married people. More single people than married people. Pretty crazy. The median age for someone's first marriage, okay, is 29 and a half for women and 27.4 for women. Did I say women twice? 29 and a half for men and 27.4 for women. And so a lot of you guys, as you talk to your grandparents, are like, yep, I got married when I was 17. And so I imagine the median age has gone up tremendously since a few generations ago. This one's crazy too. By the time young adults reach age 50, 1 in 4 of them would be single all of their lives. Now, that's not to discourage you. I don't want to like strike fear or anxiety in you. It's just a reality of the world that we are living in. Just increasingly more single. And I know and we recognize that everyone feels this differently, right? Everyone feels this differently. You might be getting pressure from your parents, and what they're thinking about is they want grandkids. And so they're like, you need to find somebody so I can get some grandkids. You may be feeling that pressure. Maybe you're feeling the pressure. Haley kind of referenced this, like in the South and in like rural or suburban areas, like typically people get married younger versus in big cities. And so maybe you're feeling just like cultural pressure, or maybe you're starting to ask like, or maybe people are kind of like, they meet you and they're like, you're single, with this tone of like, why? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, is everything okay? And you kind of feel that from them. Or maybe that pressure is actually coming from more like an internal place, and you're kind of starting to ask yourself like, is something wrong with me? Like, why am I still single? And so we all feel this really differently. And I think what that leads to is you have some people who are obsessed with marriage and the idea of marriage, right? They idolize it. They think this is going to be the thing that solves all my problems. This is going to take all the past pain away. This is going to be my redemption is going to be through this relationship with this man or this woman. And they're obsessed with the idea of marriage. On the other side, you probably have some other people that are kind of opposed to the institution of marriage. You see this rise of like radical feminism that is like no woman should ever need a man, and it's kind of become an attack on God's design for marriage. Maybe you're just a product of like a broken home. Maybe you're a product of seeing an unhealthy marriage, a bad marriage, and so you've kind of looked around and you're like, I don't want that. If that's what being married's like, I don't want that. And so maybe you're opposed to kind of the institution of marriage. We kind of want to present this. We want to present this season as really an opportunity for you to not just prepare for marriage, but to learn what it looks like to serve God in your singleness. So we're going to talk about some gifts and some guidance for single people. All right, gift number one: you have more freedom and flexibility in this season than you ever will. Now, a lot of times what people say is you got all the free time in the world, and the church can even take advantage of this. Is like, oh, we need something done, just call them. They're single, they got nothing going on, and that's kind of the tone that's used. And I don't think that's always helpful, even if it's true. It may be true. I don't think it's always helpful. And so we wanted to say it like this: you have more freedom and responsibility because your interests are undivided, right? Just like we talked about. And so we've kind of talked about this a little bit, and so we'll kind of move on to the next one.
Yeah, another gift is that you have more capacity for intimacy. Now, when I say that, you might be like, what? Actually, no, I don't have intimacy, right? I'm single. But what I mean by that is that really kind of in two ways. One, you have the capacity to have more intimacy with God, because you have a dependency on him that's different, right? You're making decisions mainly on your own. You don't have someone to kind of bounce that idea off of. And so you go to God for discernment, right? And so you have this ability to really have an intimacy with God that is devoted. And then also you have capacity, time, and energy to kind of have more of a broad sense of intimacy, right? With friends, with community, with your church. You can kind of invest in those relationships without that singular focus on this one relationship in your life. And so those are the kind of gifts that we've seen, but also some guidance for this season.
Yeah, so here's some guidance for single people. I just kind of put it in two words: content, but also contending. I think so many times people read Paul's words and they're like, you just got to learn the secret of being content. Just be content. Just be content in your season. You're like, stop telling me to be content. Like you're just kind of going crazy. And I would say this: yes, absolutely. Like that's in Scripture. Learn the secret of what it is to be content in every season. But also, while you're there, don't just sit back and wait. It's not a passive season for you. Like contend. Be contending, like be someone who is seeking the Lord, even more so now when your interests aren't divided. Be someone who is actively praying, maybe for a spouse if that's the desire of your heart. Be praying for that person, right? Be praying for God to be forming them into his image, even right now. Be serving like we've talked about, like be content, learn that secret of being content, but also, man, lean into what it means to contend, right? To leverage every minute of your life for the gospel.
And I think we felt like it was important to add both of those because I think that, preaching this idea of being content in your singleness can sometimes belittle the long-term suffering of singleness. Suffering is not, singleness is not this acute season of suffering where it's like this really, really hard thing that I'm experiencing right now. But it's day in, day out. You wake up and you go to sleep and it's kind of the same, right? And you're looking and you're seeing other people live a life that maybe you would like and you would have a desire for. And so there's a real kind of suffering that comes with singleness that's this long-term kind of quiet suffering. And so contending in that and being a part of that process rather than just kind of sitting in it and letting it happen to you.
Yeah. Another piece of guidance that we would say is this: your singleness does not disqualify you. I think a lot of people, kind of like we talked about with that spectrum of like, well, when I'm married, then I can be effective for the Lord. And it's like, no. You can be used by God right now. There are single people, you can be called to ministry. You can hold a leadership position in the church. We want you to hold leadership positions. We want you to be involved in leading and serving here at local church. There's a place for you. And so we never want you to feel like, well, one day when I'm married, then I can be used by God in the church, or then he can really be able to use me in a mighty way. That's not how it works. Singleness does not disqualify you. Scripture clearly backs this up and shows that single people are not less than in the kingdom. And so let me just preface this next part for a second, okay? In Matthew 19, Jesus gives what he himself calls a hard teaching, okay? He says, this teaching is difficult. If anyone can receive it, they should. And that's a big if. Like, if this is a message that you can receive, you should. And so Matthew 19, Jesus talks about eunuchs, all right? So to keep this as PG as possible, all right? You can do your own research on what a eunuch is. Let's just, a eunuch, you like that? That's pretty good. Yeah. A eunuch is someone who, a man who is unable to reproduce because they no longer have the required equipment, all right? Let's say that. They're unable to reproduce. They don't have what it takes. Okay, so these guys, there's a few different reasons for this, and Jesus talks about this. He says, listen, some eunuchs were born this way. Jesus recognizes a pretty difficult reality that some people are born with some like deformity, right? He recognizes that. He says some people have been made eunuchs by other people, so they were castrated for social or political purposes in order to be able to be at full service to their master. And then he offers a third group. He says some people choose to live like eunuchs, okay? So nothing physical happens, but they're choosing to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom, okay? And this is what he's talking about. He's saying, listen, I'm not saying that this person needs to suppress their sexuality, right? But what they have done is actually chosen to practice self-control over their sexual desires, okay? And so he's saying there's a third group of people, right? Nothing physical. Let me just reiterate that. He's saying there is a group of people that choose to live like that for the sake of the kingdom, right? And then he kind of references all of that as reference from Isaiah 56. It talks about eunuchs and how they will actually receive a greater inheritance from their masters because now they are fully devoted to their service. They're fully devoted. And so what we see here is this radical shift because during this time, men were only valuable if they could have land and a lineage. If they could keep their name going, then they had value. Women were valuable if they were able to have babies. And so what Jesus is teaching right here is so controversial. What Jesus is saying is, no, you as a single person, if you have chosen to live and not suppress your sexuality, but to practice self-control over your sexual desires, can be effective in the kingdom. And you can even have a greater inheritance, a greater reward because of your faithfulness. And so, again, Jesus calls us, he's like, this is a hard teaching. If you can receive it, receive it.
Yeah, so 2 other kind of quick guidances for a season of singleness. One, your singleness isn't about you. And so what I mean when I say that is not necessarily, that it's not about you. You need to live it serving, although we've kind of taught that. I think there's some truth to that. But also, you might not be the reason you're single. I think a lot of times, especially the older you get, if you're continuing to be single, you start to really internalize this and ask questions of what's wrong with me? Why am I not married? Why is this person? But Ben Stewart says it this way. He says, it's not always about your development, but the development of God's plan. And he talks about Abraham and Sarah and how, he didn't give them children until it was impossible for them to have children. And that was so that his plan could be fulfilled, so that it would be a miracle. And so it might not be about you. There might be some of you in the room that it is about you. Like, you need to develop. You got some things to do before you're ready to be married, right? But for some of you, it might just be that God has a big plan that you're a part of in this way. And so trusting him in that. Another thing would be lean into the eternal question, not the temporary one. Alex listed off a ton of questions that single people might be asking themselves. And, I think the big ones, when am I going to get married? Am I going to get married? Will God give me a spouse, right? What do I do with this desire until he does? But if you really look underneath that, you're asking a question that everyone in every season is asking. It's, will I trust God with my desires? Mm-hmm. Do I believe God to be kind? Does God withhold good from me? Right? Can I trust him, right? And we all have those desires in our lives that aren't being met, all of us, in every season. And I think that this is so important to answer this question. And if you get the opportunity to do it in singleness, do it then, because you're going to keep answering it in every single season of your life. And this is really the threshold of our theology, is what do we believe about God? Who is God? And what does that mean for me and my life, right? And so I would encourage you, lean into that more than anything. Don't let your thoughts take over on all these temporary questions, because God wants to do something big. So kind of bottom line for this section, use the gifts of singleness to live undivided, devoted lives with God and for God. Yeah. Okay, so now dating. We're going to move on to dating.
And we're going to move, so just full confession here. We had a hard time coming up with the gifts of dating, all right? Dating can be really a difficult season. There is a gift to it, and we're going to kind of move through this kind of quickly, but also we want to touch on some of this. And so here's the gifts we came up with, all right? It is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to learn about yourself. It's an opportunity to learn how to treat another person, right? And so there is gifts in dating, but it's also a really difficult season because you're not necessarily lonely, but you're not married, so you can't be doing those things either. You know what I mean? And so it's a difficult, challenging season, but there are gifts to it. Some of the guidance, I would say this kind of quickly: look in the right places. Look in the right places. Haley really doesn't want me to say this, but I really want to say it.
I told him not to.
I'm going to say it. Some people look for Gucci in a Kmart, all right? You're not going to find Gucci in Kmart. You're not going to find Lululemon at Kmart, okay? And so like, listen, if you want to go out and meet people, I'm good with that. Online dating, I'm good with that too. We know people that have gotten married and found each other online dating. That's great. I would say this, start around God's people. Like, probably not a good idea for you to like get set up with like one of your lost friends. Like, hey, I got a person that would be great for you, and it's like that. I don't know about that one. And so, just general rule: look in the right places. If you want to find a child of God, go to God's house. General rule of thumb. So, yeah.
Yeah, so next piece of guidance is evaluation over infatuation. Okay, the main goal of dating is evaluation. You are asking questions about this person. Now, in different seasons of your life, this is going to look different, right? In high school, don't pull a Haley and be like, am I going to marry this guy? That might not be the time to ask that particular question. Maybe, but maybe ask more like, do I like this kind of personality? Do I get along with this type of person? What kind of things do I like to do with a person, right? Like, do we have same hobbies? Ask maybe some of those questions. But as you get older, it really is this a person I can marry? Is this someone I can trust? Is this someone that I could build a life with and a future with? Do we have shared values, right? And so I would just say that's the main goal of dating. But infatuation in dating is inevitable, right? Infatuation is this feeling of love. It kind of fogs everything, and this person is wonderful, and they do no wrong, and you just love them so much, and that is inevitable. I would say if you're dating someone and you're not feeling any of that, like, you might not like them, you know? So, like, break up, I guess. I don't know. So it is important, but evaluation is essential. You have to do it. And so I would say when you can't see clearly, because you won't, when you can't see clearly when you're dating, look to other people who can, okay? Find people in your life that love God and that know you and love you, and ask them what they think. If you're the only person who likes your boyfriend, that's not good, okay? You're going to always be the only person that likes them. So just be careful about that, right? So evaluation over infatuation, for sure. Listen to your mom also. Okay.
Can you tell that we were in student ministry for 7 years?
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to do some kind of quick points of guidance surrounding boundaries, which we all love to talk about in dating.
Yes. So I would say the guidance there is create, communicate with each other, and commit to together boundaries. And so just kind of some quick hitter ones right here. Kind of one thing that we say a lot, Haley says a lot, is if you can't talk to your close community about it, probably shouldn't have happened. Probably shouldn't be happening. So
and if you can't talk about it, if you guys can't talk about what you just did because you're feeling awkward about it, you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
If you're not living in accountability, you're inviting destruction. It's a big one. This is Haley's favorite.
Yeah, this is someone's spouse, and it might not be yours, okay? So just think about that, right? Like, you don't know until that day that you are committing your life to them. Things can happen. And so respect the other person. That is someone's spouse, and it might not be your spouse. So think about that.
This is a big one, too. Don't play married. So what we mean by that is oftentimes physical intimacy is tied to emotional and relational and even spiritual intimacy. It's the reason why you make a covenant before God and other people to get married, and then you consummate that marriage. They follow each other. And also, like, vice versa. You make a physical decision with somebody, and you're making soul ties, right? This is not just a physical act. Like, there's other things at play here. And I would also probably say it's a good boundary to have as far as, like, a spiritual boundary of, like, I would be really, really wise and think about, should I be praying with this person that I'm dating, okay? Pray for them, absolutely. Pray with them, you may be inviting physical intimacy because you've opened up some spiritual intimacy. So.
Yeah, don't commit too much too fast, because if you do that, you're just going to want to be more and more intimate. If you're intimate emotionally, that's going to lead to other things too. So it kind of leads to one another. So bottom line for this section, use the gift of dating to not only grow in yourself and your relationship with that other person, but ultimately to grow in devotion to God. Yeah,
so married people, here you go. This is for you, all right?
Thanks for hanging in with us, married people.
Also, there's so much to say here. I'm sure we're going to have some messages or series on marriage in the future. So we just added a few in here. So
thinking about marriage, obviously we think it's a gift, right? We are married. We love being married. Really what marriage is it's this gift of having a partner to do all of this with. Right, that's the ideal, is that you're partnering together in the gospel. One thing I like to say is the overall purpose for marriage is kind of twofold. It's for your maturity, and it's for the ministry of the gospel. And so it's always working towards those things. Your maturity, it's working to mature you, usually through challenges. And then it's also for the ministry, right? Paul talks about how marriage is a picture of the gospel. And so we are called to use our marriage as a way to share the gospel to other people. Yeah. So maturity, ministry.
This one is also kind of a hard teaching and can actually be a little bit sad. But I'll say the phrase and you'll understand why I think it's sad. Here's the guidance. Keep an eternal focus. The caveat to that is marriage is not eternal. Marriage is something that we experience on this side of eternity, and it is a fantastic way to partner together and to mature you and have a ministry together with your spouse and be able to do more together than you could apart. But here's the deal. When we are on the other side of eternity, the Bible says that people are not going to be taken in marriage, okay? And so marriage, that relationship, is not the same on this side or on that side of eternity as it is on this one. And so, man, keep an eternal focus here. And so a big piece of that is married people, like your sole focus Your one goal is not please your spouse. That's a way that we can honor God, but your one goal is undivided devotion, right? And so, man, just keep that eternal focus. And so if your marriage is the most important thing in your life, like even before a relationship with God, that's an issue. That's an issue. Yeah.
One thing I would add here is absolutely married people, we are called to disciple our family. I would even maybe go so far to say that that's probably our primary role of discipleship is our kids and our family, but disciple your family, but not only your family, okay? I've seen a lot of people, friends of older people that I know that they're like, okay, I'm going to go to church and serve and do all these things so that one day my kids will love the Lord and they'll serve the Lord and they'll go to church. And then their kids are out of the house and they take a step back. They're like, oh, my work's done, right? I'm going to go on vacation. I can miss Sundays. I'm not going to serve, because they were doing it for their family, not because they were undividedly devoted to God. So there's a bigger kingdom than your family kingdom. So yes, disciple your family, but not only your family. There are other people to be discipling as well. And one quick thing I would say too, when you can serve together, when you can't, serve anyways, okay? I see this all the time, that one spouse is maybe not as committed than the other to the church, to the Lord, serving, right? Could be a husband, could be a wife. And I think a lot of times the other spouse lets that be like, well, I'm not going to do it either, right? But you're not called to serve the way that your husband or your wife is serving. You are called to be devoted to Christ. So if you can serve together and your husband and wife's on board with that, great. If you can't, do it anyways. Show up anyways. Paul talks about how you can win over your spouse in the way that you love and serve God. So serve anyways. Last thing I would say for married people, let marriage build refinement in you, not resentment in you. Okay? We kind of opened up this whole thing talking about the divided mind, right? And how married people, your mind is divided, right? Your interests are divided. I think a lot of times if we're not careful, we can start to let that build resentment in us, right? Thinking about, well, I wish he did this, or I wish she did this, or these dang kids, they always need something, and could they leave me alone? Or I'd be a great Christian if I didn't have toddlers, right? Like I would wake up early and read my Bible for hours. I promise I would. But it's these kids that are keeping me from doing it, right? And we can start to kind of build resentment of what our spouse or our children are causing in our split mind, but that's really our responsibility, right? Our kids are actually not doing that. Our spouse is not doing that. We can decide what we put our attention to. And so I would just say, let it refine you, right? In marriage, you're invited to this sacrificial donation of self, right? And that is how Jesus loves. And so lean into that. Let God teach you, how do I sacrificially donate myself in a way that grows me closer with the Lord in kind of being like Christ in the way that I love and I serve my family. So use the gift of marriage in maturing you and exemplifying the gospel to lead you to a deeper devotion, to a primary relationship to God, not just your spouse.
Yeah, so as we wrap up today, we kind of have a bottom line, thinking about finding your person. Like, who is that? Who is your person? And here's the bottom line for today is this. Your person is the one who knows and loves you best. That's your person. The person who knows and loves you best. And so for a lot of us, maybe all of us, maybe not all of us, my prayer, and I'm sure yours, is that you would find a human that's able to really just know and love you deeply. But to avoid being cheesy at all costs here, like, Jesus is the one who knows and loves you best. It's him. And so, like, when you think about, man, who knows me best? Who could know you more than a God who knit you together in your mother's womb? Who could know you more than the God who has deposited, dreams and desires and passions in your heart? Who could know you more than that? Who could love you more than the one who sacrificed his own life on a cross for you? Find your person. And understand that, hey, like, the person that knows and loves me best is the person of Jesus. And everything else that happens beyond that, whether you are single, whether you are dating, whether you are married now or you're going to be married one day, regardless of what season you're in, Jesus is the one who knows and loves you best. He knows what you need right now. He knows what you need in the future. And so, man, we're getting ready to sing a song. Before we do, Haley, I want you to read that quote.
Yeah, so we have a quote to end. It's by A.W. Tozer in his book, The Pursuit of God. And it says, "The evil habit of seeking God and effectively prevents us from finding God in full revelation. In the and lies our great woe. If we omit the and, we shall soon find God. And in him, we shall find that for which we have all our lives been secretly longing." So it's not God and a boyfriend or a girlfriend, not God and a spouse, God and a baby, God and a house, God and a job, right? It goes on and on and on. It is just God, right? That is it. Our full devotion, our full attention is just on God, because he will fulfill our every desire. He will satisfy us with good. He promises it. And so in every season, I would just challenge us all, what's your and? What are you asking for besides just God? And really ask, how can I be fully devoted to God? And kind of, just sacrifice those desires for all the other things. Yeah.
So we want to kind of close today singing a song together. It's called "I Want Jesus."